Hi, I'm L'Oreal Moondagger. I'm the current Kingdom Regent of the Desert Winds, and we're a very widespread kingdom which can make travel very difficult and nearly impossible to do in the winter. So I decided to create a series of tutorials in order to bring the arts and sciences to you, no matter where you are. So I hope you enjoy watching and learn a little something too.
Hi, I'm Neobrood. This is my lovely assistant L'Oreal. We're going to show you guys how to make a tunic today. So first we're going to start with measurements. Alright, so first you're going to need yourself a measuring tape. You're going to measure around the widest three parts of the body, which is around the chest, around the belly at the widest part, and around the hips. Thank you, the hips. So we'll go ahead and start there.
We don't need to say out loud what your measurements are.
I'm not going to say out loud what your measurements are. Okay. You want to draw yourself a little diagram. So, then after we have our measurements done, what we'll go ahead and do is we're going to add to each of them, and I'm just going to explain that right now. From shoulder to shoulder, you're going to add 2 inches to that measurement. From neck to shoulder, you're going to add 1 inch to that measurement. From shoulder to elbow, or the sleeve length, you're going to add 1 inch to that measurement. From the top of the shoulder to 3 inches below the armpit, you'll add 1/2 inch. Again, this one's going to vary depending on how baggy you want your sleeve. From the top of the shoulder to the belt line, you're going to add 1/2 inch. And from the top of the shoulder to the bottom of the knee, you're going to add 1 inch. And then for the core measurements, you're going to take the largest of the core measurements, which is generally the hips, and you're going to add different amounts depending on how big the person is. So for L'Oreal, it's going to be about 4 or 5 inches. And then for someone that is much smaller, you're going to add about 4. I wouldn't go any less than 3 for a very skinny person. And you can get up to 12 depending on how large the person you're making the tunic is for. So that's good. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to cut out your main panel. I drew a little diagram here. Just in preparation for this, you're going to want to make sure that you set up your fabric so that it's laid over itself long enough to do your shoulder to your knee measurement. This is going to prevent you from cutting twice, and it'll give you 2 identical panels. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take the earlier measurement, the shoulder to shoulder measurement. This is the modified measurements. And you're going to subtract your shoulder to shoulder measurement from 1/4 of your widest measurement around the core of the body. And then you're going to take that measurement, you're going to put it here, for your widest part here. So this should be 1/4 of your widest core measurement. And then you're going to come in this amount here. It's kind of confusing. And then for this measurement, you're going to go from the top of your shoulder to 3 inches below your armpit, that measurement we took earlier. And then here's going to be where your belt line measurement goes. So you're going to measure down to where that is. And then you're going to measure out 1/4 of your widest core measurement plus 6 inches from the fold of the fabric, and you're going to make a line there at 3 inches above where you measured your shoulder to kneecap measurement. You're going to make a dot, you're going to connect that one, and then you're going to make a mark here on the edge of the fold, on the edge of the fold, and you're going to draw a bell curve from this mark down to that mark. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now on this piece I have here. For this, you're going to need your yardstick or your carpenter's square, which is usually easier.
Sorry.
You're fine. So again, this is going to be 1/4 your widest measurement at the core. And usually, again, this is the hip measurement. Don't be afraid to use a calculator. You make a mark here. You want to use the top line here as, you want to use that top line as where, you want to use that top line, this is where your seam would be. You can cut it, or what I like to do is just leave it there so I don't have to sew it together later. But it is nice to have, excuse me, when you're going through other things. I like to use a carpenter's square because I know it's a square, and then I don't have to worry about it being whatever measurement later. So I'm going to measure down to here. It shows my measurement is 26.5. This is not L'Oreal, in case you were wondering. So my carpenter's square is 24 inches. So we're going to add 2.5 to that to get where the belt line should go. And then we're going to measure out 1/4 of the excuse me, 1/4 of the widest core measurement plus 6 inches from the fold. Note that the fold is right here, and we're measuring in from the fold and then out. So that measurement was 13.25. So 19.25. And then we're going to make a mark from, excuse me, 3 inches above the maximum that we're going to put, so the shoulder to knee measurement. So first let's get that measurement. So it's 42, so it's going to be 39. So I like to make a little mark there where it's going to end, and then I'll go out the 1/4 of the core measurement plus 6, making it 19.25. And then I like to go up 3 inches from that point.
Excuse me.
And L'Oreal is going to die. Okay. And then we're going to make a little X right there, you see, and then we'll take our straight edge or our yardstick, and we'll measure from that point to where our belt line was. And then so there you have your measurements, so like that. And then you're going to kind of eyeball in a bell curve. This takes practice to get it right the first time without having to try again. And it's okay if it comes a little bit lower, like it did in this case. It's always easier to make things smaller than to make them bigger. So now we have our basic layout. Now for that complicated measurement that I was talking about earlier. You need to take your shoulder to shoulder measurement. So in this case it is 20, and then you're going to subtract from that 1/4 of your widest core measurement. So that was excuse me, 13.25 in this case. So 20 that's got to be wrong. So that's going to be 4.75 in this case, in from the edge. Very important to remember it's from the edge in and not from the fold out. Because if you forget, then you're screwed. So we're going to measure that 4 3/4. Again, it's not a bad idea in this case to give it a little extra, because it's a lot easier to remove it than to add it. And then from your shoulder down to 3 inches below your armpit measurement, which is 14.5 on this one. You just make a mark, and you want to have a real sharp curve. I did a bad job right there. So you want to have a real sharp curve in. And then it just kind of abruptly turns upward. It's not even real. And this is going to be where your armpit sits. And then you're going to go ahead and pin wherever I put my pins. There was some behind you. They magically appear when you call them. Sometimes. Not really, ever. You're going to pin at intervals about every 2.5 to 3 inches, just on the inside of the line that you've created. Usually I like to use different pins, but I don't know where mine are. Paying especially close attention, and I'm doing what you're not supposed to do. Don't when you're pinning, try not to lift the fabric too much and don't bunch it. So you're going to pin along the line here. Ow, stab my finger. You want to make sure that you always put a pin at the corners because they're especially difficult spots. Again, this is the fold of the fabric, and then this top edge is a fold of the fabric, though it doesn't necessarily need to be. Note how I'm not going on the regular line, but going on the line that we cut inside the fabric. Excuse me. Okay, and then voila, you have it nice and cut. And then you're going to take either your pinking shears. They have this really nice zigzag pattern. Some people don't like them. I like them a lot. They prevent the fabric from fraying. Or your regular shears, really good for this. And you're going to just cut on the line. Outside of the needles, or pins, excuse me. And then you're going to start at the top. If you don't use this fold up here to your advantage, then you would normally cut in, but I'm using that fold, so I'm going to cut down. And again, you want to try and not lift up the fabric as much as you can, just to avoid them being too different. And then once that part is done, you'll collect your excess fabric for use later as sleeve portions. And then you can open it up. Remove your pins and open it up. And it should look something. Oops. Something like this if you're utilizing that fold at the top. That's two exactly the same size panels with a line right down the middle. For the rest of the tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and use a different one that I've prepared earlier that I cut at the top, so you can see that difference. So you'll get two pieces if you cut the top that look like this. Okay, next what we're going to go ahead and do is with the step, if you have used the separate panels, we're going to pin these together here at the shoulder, and then we're going to sew it across using a straight stitch and then a zigzag stitch, and then you're going to want to make sure that you back stitch on the edges.
So you're going to go.
So I'm going to go ahead and pin it.
One side all the way to the other.
Yes. So I'm going to pin it here again every 1.5 to 2 inches or so. Okay, so now we're all set. We've got it all pinned and nice and lovely. We're going to sew a straight line across, about half an inch, 1/4 inch from the edge here, and then we're going to zigzag that on our next pass. So just go ahead and go straight, then back up. And make sure that you keep it even. That's the purpose of the pins. If you own a serger, you can just serge this edge. It's much quicker and easier. I have a serger, it's just not set up yet. Remove your pins before you zigzag, or else you will hit them and break your machine. So again, with the zigzag, you're going to go on the inside, or close to the outside, I guess, of the straight line that you just made, to the right side of the straight line. Going to use kind of a whitish zigzag with a good stitch spacing. Alright, and this is what it should look like when you're finished there, just like the other portion. So again, if you do the cheater method, you don't need to do this step. So then it looks like that. Okay, so next we're going to do the neck hole. You're going to need to get your fabric that you're going to use to trim your neck hole. This is also going to be the same fabric you use to trim it. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but it's a good idea to have the same stuff. So we're going to set aside this panel for now. And then we're going to cut a piece of whatever the fabric is we're going to use that is about as wide as our panel is wide. So it's about, the shoulder measurement wide, and about, the shoulder measurement long. Another good time for your wonderful carpenter square. This particular tunic has an 18-inch shoulder, so we're going to make it 18 inches long by 18 inches wide. So wherever my 18 mark is. Doesn't need to be exactly a square, as long as it's bigger than 2 inches around your neck opening, or however big your more decorative trim is. Generally, you want to iron this out before you decide to do this part, but I'm a rebel. Now that you've got your square measured on there, you'll take your shears again, wherever I put them. Thank you. Take your shears and cut it out.
Shears.
Now the only reason why I'm doing this kind of in the middle of the fabric is because I'm trying to get the tie-dye look. So normally I would measure it from the edge so that we don't waste fabric. Bidet doesn't care. Quick note, sheets are usually not the best thing to make trim out of. You generally want something a little bit more sturdy. It stands up to the applique better, but I have some sneaky ways, so. Also, if you're using as your base fabric something lighter, try to choose something heavier for your trim just to make your applique life easier. Now we have our square of fabric. Next, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to take our main panel that we've sewn together. Make sure you put it on the wrong side. In this case, it's the side that has the stitching on it. If you're using the one that you didn't have to do this, then it doesn't really matter because both sides are the same. You're going to put it facing down. So you want to put the wrong side up. Yeah, I did it wrong. You want to put the wrong side up and then the right side down. So it's right side to wrong side. And then again, you're going to make it just a little bit forward. You're going to off-center it just a little bit. And then you're going to take your bowl, which is about 6 3/4 inches is the size that I like to use. You want to make sure it's at least your head, the circumference of your head, wide. So you will go ahead and off-center it just a little bit, and then we're going to measure on each side so that it's the same from edge to edge. And in this case, it's going to be 5 1/8 inch. And then you're going to draw a circle around it, real dark. You want it to be real dark so that you can see it when we're sewing later. So it's like that. And then you're going to want to measure about, a 2.5 inch keyhole below. That's about an inch wide, centered on the center. Usually you can tell where the center is because you've had that fold. So or you can just measure the easy way, just measure to the center. I know that this panel is 18 inches wide, so the center should be at 9. And then you're going to measure down from this edge, the lower edge. First you're going to measure about 1 inch on each side, and then you're going to measure down about 2.5 inches. Oops. And then you're going to kind of pencil in what they call a keyhole. It can be a lot deeper, but I like to have at least 2.5 inches just to make sure you can get your head through. Usually with the 6 3/4 inch bowl, I don't need to measure the person's head. I haven't run into it yet, but I'm sure somebody with a really big head will make me a liar. And then you're going to measure out for, this is going to be a simple trim. At this point, this is where you would add your decorative, really wavy trims, your complicated trims. You would just draw them around. I'm just going to do a real simple line. So all the way around, I'm going to measure out about 1.5 inches because we're going to lose about, excuse me, 1/4 inch in the seam. So we're going to measure out about 1.5 inches all the way around at the edges here. Oops. So once you've gotten the marks all the way around, you're going to just connect the dots, if you will, and just make it look kind of even on both sides. Just make sure, I like to use a pencil so that way if I mess up, I can erase it and it doesn't matter. And then when it's completed, it should look like this. Now you're going to go ahead and pin on the inside of this inner circle, with the pins being at a 90-degree angle to the line, or as close to 90 as you can get since it's a curved line. Something like this. You don't need to go crazy. You need maybe 6, maybe 8 pins in the center. The purpose of this is just to keep the fabric from moving when we sew on this line. I usually like to put at least one in the keyhole, depending on how wide I make it. Again, I'm showing you bad habits. Okay. So like so. And then you're going to take this, you're going to make sure that it's nice and flat. You're going to take this and sew along this line, not on the inside of that, down on the edge of the keyhole, up and around. You're going to backstitch at this point, or wherever you start, and then you're going to cut the inside. So I'm going to show you how that works now. This is what it looks like when it's finished. Make sure that you sew directly on the line. It's kind of hard to see here, but you can see that I've sewn a straight stitch right on that line, or as close as I could get, down and around the keyhole. Don't do this part. Down and around the keyhole and up and around, and I backstitch right here. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut the inside out and then cut around the edges of where it's going to be. So this is what it's going to look like once you're done. Just make sure that on the center part you cut through both, your base color and your trim. And then on the edge, just cut around the edge of where your trim is, see? And then next, what we're going to do is we're going to push this stuff through, we're going to iron it, and we're going to sew it down again on the edge. Next thing, you're going to want to get your iron nice and hot. You're going to use lots of steam. And then you want to set it on the setting for whatever it is you're using. Anyway. And then usually you're not going to want to use it straight on a table. That's why I put a towel down. You can also do this on an ironing board. You're going to pull the lining of the trim in. You're going to take your iron and you're going to iron it down like so. Move your towel. Try not to do this on your mom's kitchen table. She will probably freak out. But if you do, be safe. And you're going to do this all the way around. You can probably cut. And then once you get it all through, you're going to flip it over like I have here. And then you're going to want to make sure that you pop out these two little corners as best you can. Don't be afraid to get your finger in there. Use your pinky, whatever you got to do to make it look crisp. And then you're going to iron it down again on this side so that it's nice and flat. It can take some practice. It's very frustrating at first. Just kind of hang in there. You're going to want to make it so that your trim is what shows through, and then underneath is your base color. So once you're done with this portion, it should look something like this. So this is our finished neck hole. Note how it's nice and pressed right here. We're just going to sew along this edge to make sure that it stays down and stays crisp. And then we're going to go on to our next step, which is sleeves. So here's our finished product. We've stitched around the edge of the neck hole. Now it's ready for us to applique it down. We just need to steam a seam here, which I'll show you in just a moment. Next, we're going to get the sleeves ready and the trim ready. Okay, so now we're going to get the length of our sleeve measurement, and then it's going to be, the width of it is going to be our width from shoulder to elbow. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our cloth measuring tape and we're going to measure up and around the edge of one of our armholes that we created in our main panel. On this one it's going to be 29, and then we're going to add about 5 inches onto that measurement. We're going to make it so for this one it's going to be 34 inches long by about 8 inches wide. Okay, so now we're going to cut it. We're going to cut rectangles. Again, just to save yourself time and effort, you're going to use the long ends. This time we're going to leave them open. And we're going to use that as our length this way, and then we're going to cut this way for our width on the sleeves. Okay, so here we've already gone ahead and cut it out. You're going to use the same, techniques as you used for the main panel. And then you just cut it out, length by width. And then next we're going to go ahead and do the trim. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put on our trim for our sleeves. So we're going to pin it on the we're going to pin it right side to wrong side. So if this was the right side, the side that you want showing, it's going to be facing down. And then this is going to be the wrong side of the fabric. So this is going to be the actual portion of the sleeve that's showing. So we're going to pin it, and then we're going to sew it along here, just like we did for the neck hole. And then we'll flip it over, we'll iron it down, and then we'll sew it again. And then it'll be ready for our applique. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're going to take our trim after we've sewn it on. You're going to fold it out just like we did on the neck trim, and then iron it down right here so that it's flat. And then we're going to flip it over and fold it up and fold it down on that line so that you can see here the base fabric on one side and your new fabric on the other. And then you'll iron it down again, and then you'll stitch along that edge. And you're going to repeat this process for all the edges, including the bell trim edge. To get a good bell trim edge, what you're going to want to do is take your take your bell trim and put it over your trim fabric, and then measure up, measure in 2 inches, which is what we did here. We just measured the length of it up 2 inches to make this trim piece. And then you're going to do that same thing for the bell trim, and then you're going to use the same process. And you'll just sew it down one more time, and then you'll be ready to do the applique portion. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to cut out symbols and put them on there. We're just going to prep everything for the steam-a-seam, which I'll show you here in just a minute. Basically, for a basic easy symbol like the one I have here, you're just going to, cut out a basic easy symbol. Just cut it out like you were cutting it out of paper. And then, you're going to use the steam-a-seam like tape. So I'm just going to cut this out really quick. Okay, so this is what it's like after it's all cut out. Notice I'm not doing anything special, I'm just cutting them out, straight edges. So now what we're going to use is what's called steam-a-seam light 2. You want to make sure you get the 1/4 inch size because we're just going to be lining things. And what this is, it's a double stick tape. It's called a fusible web. And what this does is it's real sticky on both sides, so you can apply it here on the back of whatever your symbol is. This is also going to be the same process you use for the trim pieces. You just put it on like so, all the way around. And what this is going to do, when you put it on top of your other fabric that you're going to put this on top of, you'll take your iron and you'll steam it down, and this tape will create a molecular bond between the two pieces of fabric. And then you'll be able to work with the fabric without excuse me, without having to put any pins or anything. It holds really delicate things in place, so you can just worry about the stitching. Steam-a-seam is also called stitch witchery. You're going to want to do it just on the edges. Try to keep it all on the inside because it can get real messy. Usually if you go a little bit over, it's not going to be too terribly big of a deal, because at least with the Steam-a-seam brand, it excuse me, it comes off with a few washings. And so this is just kind of a temporary hold to allow you to do the next portion of applique. Okay, so now we've gone ahead and put on the edges of all of our, on the edges, just on the edge though, we've put Steam-a-seam and kind of lined just the edge with the Steam-a-seam. Now we're going to take our iron on high steam, as much steam as we can get it to make, and we're going to put it on top of our symbol, and we're going to leave it on each area for about 10 seconds. That's about 10. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Give it a good steam while you're doing it. 9, 10. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You want to make sure that you have a towel underneath this when you're doing this, because it can get really sticky and it might produce some issues for you. And you just kind of want to go over it, make sure all of your Steam-a-seam is melted. Now that's attached and we don't have to worry about it. Alright, so now what we're doing is we're doing our applique stitch. We have, our piece here on our sewing machine. Very important when we're doing our applique stitch, or what's called a satin stitch, is making sure that you get the stitches really close together. On my particular machine, it's a digital machine, so I can just set my stitch length to 0, as close together as you can get it. So basically what a satin stitch is just a really close together zigzag stitch. So you're going to want to test this on some regular pieces of fabric when you have a machine that you have to actually get it to work. However, with my machine, I just know what settings it needs to be at. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go along the edge of, our piece here, and just have the outside stitch just barely on the other side, on the base fabric side, and then the inside stitch all the way in. So you're going to start and then you're just going to let it go. Making sure to keep it just on that edge, and as it comes out you can see there where it's really nice and close together. You can't see the fabric underneath, and it's like coloring it with a marker. So that's what a proper satin stitch should look like. It should be really close together. There shouldn't be any spacing. It should just look like a straight line. The particular thread that I'm using is multicolored. However, you can use any thread you want. Usually I'll use what's called embroidery thread. It's a little bit more expensive, but you usually get a better finish out of it. And then you're just going to go all the way around.
So do you want to match the base, or...
Meaning?
Or the color of the thread? Would it be better to match the base fabric or the trim fabric?
You can use the color of the thread. Can match the fabric that your trim fabric or whatever your piece is, but it doesn't have to. A lot of people say that it's better to match it. I'm personally, sometimes I use different colors. You just have to be more careful when you do that. It's a lot less forgiving, because if there are holes, then they'll be much more obvious. Okay, so here we are after we've finished with our applique on our symbol. Beautiful, beautiful. Next we're gonna next we're gonna go ahead and show you guys how to pin on the sleeves. So you're gonna take your sleeves. Note that we've also finished our applique there. You're gonna fold it in half. Lengthwise, or rather widthwise, I guess. And then you're going to mark your half spot. I usually do that with a pencil. Sometimes I'll just iron it down to make it flat. Now, next you're going to line up the middle with your shoulder seam. If you don't have a shoulder seam, then there should be a ironed crease right there. Then you're going to lay your sleeve down right side on right side at the half mark, lining up the half mark with your shoulder seam. Then you're going to go ahead and pin it, just like we've done everything else, with a slight twist. So you'll start at the middle and go out. So you pin. Oops. Pin it about excuse me, every 3 inches. And then as you're getting to the curve, you want to kind of stretch your material so that it straightens out. Can we get a closer look over here? So that it straightens out right here. You're going to pin on the edge. It's okay if it goes a little bit over, that's okay. That's what we planned for. Make sure that you give it extra pinning. Oops. Make sure you give it extra pinning at the corner, because that's where you're going to run into some issues. You're going to do this same process for the other side, and then you're going to do it on the other side and put both your sleeves on, and then we'll go ahead and sew it. Alright, so now you have both your sleeves pinned on. Note that you've done it so that you can match it up pretty much. You've stretched this so it's a straight line for the moment. Next we're going to go ahead and take it and we're going to sew it. It's not hard, it's just like our shoulder seam. So we're going to do our straight line first. Excuse me, our straight line first, and then our zigzag stitch to lock it in. Make sure you do your back stitching, and make sure your machine's not broken. So make sure that you back stitch. Just go around the edge. I like to give it again about that ½ inch, quarter inch in from the edge. Again, this is something that you can do with your serger if you have one. Alright, so now we've gone ahead and gotten that all stitched up. Note how you're off the edge here about, just a few inches, but that's okay. That's why we made it bigger, and we're going to go ahead and cut it right here. You're just going to want to cut as straight a line as you can cut right here, all the way up to there where your armpit is. You want to straighten it out a little bit. Like so. And you're going to do it to the other side. Gosh. Can't breathe. So now it's straight like that. Then you'll do it to your other side as well. Don't be afraid if it's a little bit crooked. Just make it as straight as you can. As you can. This part's not particularly important as long as you make sure that you don't go inside of your main panel. Meaning, don't make any crazy valleys. Okay, so now that's done. Next thing we're going to do is pin up the sides and sew up the sides, and then we'll be done after that. So you're going to fold it inside out, pinning the right side to the right side, just line them up at the sleeve edge as best you can. Again, just pin it once, maybe every 2 to 3 inches. And you want to make sure that you line up your
seams.
Yeah, your seams. And make sure that you line up right here where it turns, you know, at your belt portion. Just pin it all the way down. Then you'll do the same thing with the other side, and you'll repeat the process that you've used on the shoulder seams and on the shoulder seams and the arms, the sleeves. Note the zigzag stitch with the straight stitch. This is to keep it from pulling apart and falling apart on you. Okay, so now we've got it all pinned up on the sides here. You just want to line it up real nice and good and then pin again every couple inches. Note how we've got, you know, the back of your, we're doing it right side to right side, so this is the wrong side that's showing, and then this is your good sides. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do the same stitch that we've been doing this whole time, just a straight stitch and then a zigzag stitch on the edges. You're going to do it on both sides. And then you turn it inside out and you'll be done. Okay, so here we have it all sewn up on both edges. I just wanted to let you guys see, you know, you're going to do the straight stitch and the zigzag stitch, and then I clip the edges just to make it a little bit cleaner. Usually I'll do that with the pinking shears, but not this time. So now we're going to turn it inside out. And then you're going to want to check all your seams, make sure you didn't miss anything, kind of pull on it, make sure everything's secure. And then go ahead and clean up all these extra little threads or anything that looks kind of terrible, just kind of cut them. And then just get it all ready for your A&S. And that's how you make a tunic.